Did you guys notice some rust on your cast iron or carbon steel skillet? Well, no worries. In this video, I'm going to give you guys some tips and show you how to restore your pan using non-destructive methods to remove light surface rust and getting your favorite skillet back in the kitchen. We'll also talk about those heavier situations that may require some sanding. Let's dive in. Okay, so for those of you that may have watched my budget-friendly carbon steel skillet recommendation that was under $45 video, you may have noticed that the large carbon steel pan featured in that video had some light surface rust. I know, so a lot of you guys were messaging me saying, hey man, did you notice that you had some rust on your large carbon steel skillet? And if so, is the large carbon steel skillet prone to rusting? Well, the short answer is yes and no it's not, but not more so than any other carbon steel skillet. Let me explain. Yes, I noticed that there was rust on the large carbon steel skillet, but it was already too late. And no, it's not more prone to rusting. Here's what happened. As I was testing out each of those skillets and as I was eliminating them over the last 6 months plus, I was actually giving them away to friends and family. And the large carbon steel skillet I gave away to a family member. And then when it was time to reveal my budget-friendly recommendation, I realized that I was talking a lot about the large because I kept comparing the winning skillet to the large carbon steel skillet, and then it hit me that I didn't really have any B-roll to kind of show you guys those comparisons. So I called up the family member and I said, hey, I need the skillet back for a couple days because I want to shoot some B-roll of it and kind of make that connection to my audience between the winning skillet, the Ballerini, and the large carbon steel skillet. So the family member brought it over, and to my surprise, there was surface rust, and I can't tell you how heartbroken I was. I tried my best to clean up as much of it as possible, but I didn't want to tamper with the surface finish in any way. I was really scared that I would, because I wanted it to be that original skillet. And then I just figured, you know what, I'm just gonna shoot the B-roll and try to use some creative lighting to not really show too much of the rust. And really, there wasn't a whole lot of rust. It actually looked worse on camera in some scenes than it actually was. And also a lot of that was actually the seasoning. It was not surface rust, it was just the seasoning. There was parts of the pan that were developing more seasoning than others. And then there was definitely some rust in certain spots. So it is what it is, and I was running out of time and I decided to just go ahead and shoot the B-roll and release the video and then make another video on how to remove that rust. So that's the backstory. They promised me that they're gonna take care of it now, and they've asked me to fix it for them and give it back to them. However, they don't want me in any way, shape, or form to improve the surface finish. So as you guys know, Lodge is notorious for this, especially on their cast iron skillets, but their carbon steel skillets too. The inside of the pan is not very smooth. The pan has a really bumpy surface finish, just like their cast iron skillets. Now, if it was up to me and it was my Lodge skillet, I would sand the inside smooth and remove the rust. But my family member does not want me to alter the skillet in any way. They just want me to remove the rust and keep the skillet intact with that rough surface finish. So with that being said, it's actually a really good situation, which means no sanding. And then we'll talk about the heavy duty stuff later on. If you have really heavy rust or you're trying to restore your skillet, I'll talk about and give you guys some tips on how to use sandpaper and restore those skillets. So with that being said, let's fix a carbon steel pan. So as the intro kind of already mentioned, and as you guys already pointed out, we are going to be treating this large carbon steel skillet. And as you guys can see, we have quite a bit of surface rust. Okay, now there's gonna be a few things that we're gonna need. I am gonna try to do this without destroying the pan, or what they would call a non-destructive method of removing the rust. So I'm gonna start off with a nice scouring pad, and then if that doesn't work, we're gonna move on to Barkeeper's Friend, and then if that doesn't get it off, we're gonna have to go to the orbiting sander. Now I'm using this nice cheap orbital sander from Harbor Freight. It's a 20 volt lithium ion sander. I like this model because it does have a catcher, and the reason why I like using orbital sanders is because they tend to reduce swirl marks. So I really don't want to have to use a sander, but if I have to, I'll let the owner know. No one wants rust on their pan and in their food, so I'm sure they'll be okay with it. And it's important to note that you will remove any seasoning that the pan comes with. So, you know, keep that in mind, but that's okay, it doesn't matter. We're going to re-season this pan anyways, using the potato peel method and the oven method before I give it back to the owner. I'm not gonna show those methods on video just because I already made a detailed video on that. So if you haven't already, go watch my video on how to re-season a carbon steel skillet and the top 3 reasons why your surface finish would strip in the first place. With that being said, let's get started. Okay, let's start off by just getting some nice hot water. And here's the pan right here. Okay, so first things first, I am gonna give it a really good wash. And I'm just gonna use traditional dish soap. It has a Scotch-Brite pad on top with the sponge. And we're just gonna give it a good wash just to make sure there's nothing here that shouldn't be here. Okay, so now that we've given the pan a pretty good wash, now we can kind of really look at it and see where the rust really is, and if it's actual rust or if it's just, you know, seasoning. The good thing about Lodge is they do pre-season the skillets before shipping them out to you. And quite honestly, I think that is what ultimately really protected this pan, because it could have gone a lot worse. I mean, I can tell it was being neglected. And if it wasn't for the pre-seasoning from Lodge, you know, they would have been in deep, deep trouble. So right now, it looks like to me, there's definitely a rust spot right here. There's rust all around the edges at the chamfer and on the walls. The handle ironically looks like it's in really good shape. I do see a bit of rust at the joint of the handle where the rivets would be at the very edge right here and on the inside. So we'll take care of that. Okay, so I am going to start off with the scouring pad, and this one's supposed to be non-scratch. So we'll see, this might be a little too light, but it should do something. I mean, it'll give me an indication at least if I need to move on to something a little bit more heavy duty. The other thing I'm gonna try is Barkeeper's Friend, as I mentioned. Barkeeper's Friend is really more for grease, but I've had some luck with it because it is a bit abrasive on removing some very light surface finish rust. And I know what a lot of you have been asking, why don't you just use like a chemical design for rust, specifically for, you know, surface finish rust? And, you know, I think even some of you guys have asked, can you use like a car product on your pan? I mean, you can, there's nothing kind of, you know, stopping you from doing that, but I don't want to go too chemically. These are cookware products that we are going to make our food on, so I don't want to get too involved with chemicals. I think Barkeeper's Friend is kind of good enough. It is important to try to get as much of the rust as possible off because, as you guys know, rust just grows and grows. So if you don't have all the rust off, you will get rust again, right? We want to stop it and then treat this pan, and hopefully we'll be done with it. So let's try the scouring pad. You can already see that the scouring pad is removing a lot of this surface rust already. You see that? I don't know if that's coming up on the camera, but we've already kind of removed a lot of surface rust just over here. And yeah, I can see a little bit on the pad. So we are removing a bit of surface rust already. Oh, I can feel that, okay. And for the tougher to reach areas and the tough spot right here, you know, we'll see. We'll get to that when we get to that, but so far so good. And honestly, just as I thought, the Barkeeper's Friend is doing a great job. This is looking really good and looks very promising. I don't know if you guys can see that, but I do see some of the seasoning coming off and some of the surface finish is getting down. I think that's mostly seasoning right there, but you know, we're okay. That looks good. So again, we're gonna re-season this pan, get it perfect for the customer. Okay, so I do have this little stubborn rust spot right here that I do want to get rid of. And I am going to use a sander. I'm not going to turn it on. I'm not going to turn on the orbital sander, but I am using 1500 grit sandpaper. And again, anytime you guys are sanding anything, make sure you're wearing a face mask and you are protecting yourself. I am going to go ahead and sand it. Now this orbital sander, you turn it on, you know, it can go pretty high. So I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to use it manually, just to kind of help me out and to get some of this rust off, the stubborn stuff. I'm gonna go kind of in a nice circular motion, and that really should help kind of eliminate some of that stubborn stuff. And I can actually kind of see it. I'll show you guys in a minute, but you see that color change? That's because we're getting that rust out. Well, partially because of that. And then also, obviously the sanding pad does have, you know, color in it as well, and its own stuff going on. But that's actually looking really, really good. But you can already see there's such a big difference. I mean, this pan's looking almost brand new from the factory. If we take a look closer, you can see there is a lot that already has been removed. And that trouble spot is almost all but gone. So this is looking really good. We also did the handle and that trouble spot that had some rust in here. So now I'm gonna go ahead and flip it over and just kind of see what else is obvious to me, and then we'll give it a wash and we'll see how we did. Okay, so I'm pretty happy so far with how everything's coming out. Let's go ahead and give this a wash and see what we're dealing with. Oh man, look at that. So almost all the rust is gone. So that looked like it worked. So I do see a little bit more still kind of left over right here. So we'll hit that a second time, but I mean, the majority of it is gone. I mean, look how good that looks already. Remember we had a problem spot right here? That's gone. I mean, this is looking really, really good so far. So let's check out the back. And then I'm gonna go ahead and season this with the potato peel method and then stick it in the oven just to make sure we get a complete seasoning all around. And I'll be back shortly to show you guys the results. And as you guys can see, it's still kind of smoking, but here's the back. Looks really, really good. Remember we had some problem spots right here. I'm not gonna touch it because it is hot, but that's looking really, really good. And then there's the front. Okay, so now you guys are probably seeing a lot of areas that may look like rust, but they're not. It's only been seasoned once. So that's actually the seasoning bonding with the pan again. If you take a look at my ballerini, which you can see here, it's doing a similar thing, right? It's getting that coating. So, you know, as I season it, it's gonna get more and more black until it basically looks like my Matford or my Mineral B. So this looks pretty good. Important thing is we got the rust out. I'm gonna go ahead and season it about 2 more times and then give it back to the owner. So as you guys saw, with some Barkeeper's Friend and a scuffing pad, we were able to remove most, if not all, of that surface rust. Usually that's all you need, some Scotch-Brite or maybe like a steel wool or a scuffing pad, and Barkeeper's Friend really does perform some miracles. That's usually enough to remove light surface finish, and in this case, it did a heck of a job. And as you guys saw in the video, I did have to lightly sand it without turning on the orbital sander, just manually, just a little bit, just to kind of get it going. But really, that's all it took, and the pan came out really well. So I did reseason the pan before giving it to my family member. I did the potato peel method and the oven method twice. The potato peel method did a great job of really seasoning the inside, and the oven method just protected the entire pan again. And I really hope they take care of it this time. Now let's talk about heavy rust. Now I didn't make a video on that because I don't have a pan to show you guys, but typically you would use the orbital sander and you would go up gradually on your sandpaper grit. So if you guys aren't familiar with sanding or using sandpaper or an orbital sander, the lower the number, the more coarse the grit is, and you're really going to be roughing things up. So for example, 120 grit, that's not fine paper, that's really coarse, and you're going to be removing a lot of material, versus let's say 3000 grit, which is really fine. I like to think of it as, hey, 3000 means, 3000 little dots on the paper. And that means it's finer. Whereas 120 means 120 dots on the paper, which is more spread out, more coarse. Now, it's not really like that, but when I was young, that's how my dad taught me, and it always stuck with me. So if you have heavy rust, and now I don't know your situation, feel free to leave me a comment below and I'll try to help you. But if you have heavy rust and you're trying to restore your pan or skillet, depending on what it looks like, you may need to go really coarse. Now, I would question anything below 400 grit because that's pretty aggressive. You're gonna be removing a lot of material. Now, you may need it if you have a pan that's really rusty, but my recommendation to you guys is start off at 2000 grit. Just trust me. Start off at 2000 grit. That's really fine grit. It's more towards the polishing side, but lightly sand the surface of your skillet. And if you see that it's actually taken off quite a bit and it's looking pretty good, then maybe go just, one lower. And if you notice that it's not doing anything, then, go a little bit more aggressive, maybe get 1000 or whatever, and kind of test the waters like that. It's always safer to start off with finer grit and just notice that, hey, it's not doing anything, rather than starting off with coarser grit and removing too much or ruining your pan or whatever. Now, as you're working, work up gradually. And trust me, you're gonna love it at the end, because if you don't skip too many steps, you're gonna have a really polished surface finish. So for example, if you have to start off at 1000, go 1000, 1200, 1500, 2000, 2500, 3000, 4000, however fine you wanna go up to. Now, you don't have to do that. It's entirely up to you if you want a mirror surface finish. Keep in mind, you're cooking on this thing. Eventually it's gonna turn black, so no one's gonna see your polishing work. But if that's something that you really care about, now's the time to do it. This is cast iron and carbon steel material. Wear a face mask, wear eye protection, do it outdoors, don't do it indoors, because you don't want to be inhaling cast iron carbon steel metal flakes into your lungs, right? Just be safe, okay? Be safe, take the proper precautions, do it outside, wear safety glasses, wear a mask, and keep that catcher on there. If your orbital sander has a catcher, use it. When you're done, pour that stuff out and you'll thank me later. So if you guys do want me to shoot a video on restoring a heavily corroded, rusted carbon steel or cast iron pan, let me know in the comments below. I'm sure I can find one off of eBay or, Craigslist or whatever, and I can show you guys how to do it step by step using my orbital sander. But other than that, that's it for me, guys. Check out some of my other videos and I will catch you guys on the next one. Take care, everybody. Hey everybody, how'd you guys like that last video? Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, please like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you get notified on my next video. And if you can, please share with your family and friends. I would really appreciate it. Here's some more content that I think you guys are really gonna enjoy. Check them out. As always, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. Take care.